We are rolling through the morning here as many of you are waking up. A couple of different stories that we are following. Unfortunately for the Pac-12, Cal is not going to be able to play Oregon. Unfortunate for those two schools because of one positive COVID test of an asymptomatic player. Just absolute insanity. The Packers probably ended the 49ers season with a beatdown last night in the Bay Area. I know Jimmy Garoppolo's out. I know George Kittle's out. This feels like a, 6-10, 7-9 type season for the San Francisco 49ers coming off of the Super Bowl loss. Injuries stacking up, the toughest division in all of sports. It felt like last night was the end for the 49ers. Packers bounce back in a big way from the loss to the Vikings. We'll see exactly how that breaks out going forward. We're getting you ready for the college football weekend as well as the rest of the NFL. We've got a loaded show for you, rolling through everything. And we had some fun yesterday with who we would draft from the world of sports to be president of the United States. We have a lot of you who want to weigh in. We opened up phone lines. And Danny G is fielding all these calls in California because Dub is up at the Breeders' Cup in Lexington for the show today. So let's start running through some of these calls and see who the Outkick audience would draft. Who's up first?
Let's start with Corey in Tennessee.
Corey in Tennessee, who you got?
Andy Reid and Phil Jackson. And then I wanted to thank you for the FanDuel tip. I got the Devontae Adams first pass touchdown bet, or like a double bonus type thing.
Yep.
So I got the 120 from that.
So how much fun, by the way, is being able to just gamble now that the state of Tennessee allows gambling? Pull out your phone, you're watching a game, you can put in some bets. It's super easy to use, huh?
Yeah, I've never bet before in my life, and so the first time I did it, and paid off, so pretty thankful for that.
Yeah, FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com/Clay. You get hooked up right now if you go sign up. And by the way, you can do that in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, West Virginia, and Colorado. That code works. FanDuel.com/Clay. Go get signed up right now. You get hooked up. So Andy Reid and Phil Jackson, you said. Thanks for the call. Interesting. I feel like Andy Reid would be a likable guy. I was having a text conversation with one of my buddies the other day, and I was like, our media is so divided now. Will there ever be a president that everybody likes again? I mean, somebody that's 60% of the country is like, oh, this is a great president. And I don't know if the answer is yes. I tend to think the answer is no, because so many different media organizations are predicated on serving a niche. And you have to make whoever the president is, if it's not your party, an awful human being. Like, we've seen that happen as social media has expanded. It's become more and more of a me versus them and us versus the world mentality. Everybody's either a hero or a villain. And I think social media has exacerbated that tactic. But I feel like maybe Andy Reid could be the kind of guy who everybody liked. Phil Jackson's kind of a jerk. I wonder how good of a coach Phil Jackson is when he doesn't have great superstar talent around him. I think the best thing you can say about Phil Jackson is he gets superstars to believe in him, which is a huge difficulty. I think, LeBron could have used a Phil Jackson like Kobe and Shaq and obviously Jordan had, but he never got him. And so I wonder what a truly great coach to work with LeBron could have been capable of with him. I think probably it's an interesting question. Who's the best coach that LeBron's ever played for? I think you'd have to say Eric Spoelstra, right? By a pretty substantial margin, just in terms of raw coaching ability. I think you'd probably say Spoelstra. Who's up next, Danny G?
Jeremy in Indiana.
Jeremy, who you drafting?
Give me Theo Epstein.
It's interesting. Thanks for the call. Here's my deal with Theo Epstein. He seemed like a total pussy willow over that OK sign. Do you remember that? Like, it feels like 2 years ago or whatever the heck it was in the Chicago Cubs broadcast, where he's like, I was literally shivering when they were playing the, don't look game. I think that's kind of faded. Everybody's stopped losing their mind over the OK sign. But yeah, that's my biggest issue with him. I think he might be too much of a pussy willow to be able to handle the job. He certainly did a good job with the Red Sox and with the Cubs being able to win championships there. Who's up next?
Scott in Florida.
Scott, who you drafting?
I got Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards. Interesting. Herm obviously has done well in terms of being a likable guy on ESPN, and then everybody made fun of the fact that Arizona State hired him, but the results have been pretty decent. I don't know exactly what Herm's. Somebody pull out their phone and look up Herm's record as a head coach at Arizona State. They're ranked, I believe, in the top 25. USC is ranked in the top 25, and that Arizona State game, we haven't really talked that much about this, but the Pac-12 is kicking off at 9 a.m. Pacific in the Coliseum on Saturday, tomorrow, to get you ready for college football. Never had a 9 a.m. West Coast start before. We talked with Joel Klatt about that some on Monday's show, I think. He's calling that game, and that is going to be pretty crazy to see what exactly ends up transpiring in that game with a 9 a.m. start. But Herm has done a pretty decent job there. I think the expectations were low, but he's a really good communicator who seems to connect well with his players. Who's up next?
All right, let's go with another Corey, but he's in Virginia.
Corey, this time in Virginia, who you got?
Well, I had Herm as my vice president, but I went to Gruden for my president because you got to have a hype, really, you got to have Herm to kind of calm him down. Say, hey, wait, John, listen to me. Let's calm down a minute. And he's the sweet to the sour John Gruden. So I've got those as my tandem for vice president, president.
Thank you for the call. We got a bunch of Raider guys. Roberto, while Danny G is filled in calls. What do you think about John Gruden getting fined the Raiders organization for improper COVID protocols, and you guys have now lost a sixth-round draft pick?
Stupid. Everybody, I mean, every team's got a player that's getting COVID, yet the Raiders are somehow
the team that has to pay the biggest price.
Exactly. And then the sixth, I mean, granted, it's a six-round pick. It's not that big of a deal, but still, take away a draft pick. Come on, man. Then if you get fined $500,000.
Yeah, it's
so stupid.
The Raiders now are paying the biggest penalty of anybody in the NFL. If you missed that story, they've been fined several $100,000 and docked a sixth-round draft pick over not appropriately following COVID protocols in the wake, I think, of the Trent Brown.
That's correct. Yeah,
that's right.
So what I read, Clay, was that Trent Brown wasn't wearing his device so that they could trace who he was in contact with.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
They have those devices that are supposed to tell you how many people have been within you a certain amount of feet or whatever else.
Exactly.
Who's up next?
All right, let's go to the great state of Pennsylvania. Anthony, what you got for me?
Hey, what's going on, Clay? I have two kind of that pop into my mind. I was rolling with Phil Jackson politically, not Phil Jackson, my mistake, Greg Popovich, but politically I'm not the biggest fan, but I thought media-wise he handled it pretty well. But then there was one that popped in my mind with Pat Riley.
Yeah, those are interesting ones as well. I mean, Pat Riley has clearly been instrumental in the overall success of the Miami Heat organization. I mean, he's built them very well into helped to manage and shepherd the Big Three when they won their 2 championships, and then got the team back to the NBA Finals this year in the bubble with Jimmy Butler. We'll see exactly what they have with a relatively young team. Going forward should be fairly intriguing to see there. Popovich is interesting. I mean, for all the Popovich political commentary, he actually treats the media with so much disrespect that I would think that would be somewhat interesting to actually see. Now, the positive for Popovich is it's easier to get away with stuff like that in a market like San Antonio. I don't know how Popovich would do in a New York or in L.A. where there's a lot more media activity than there is in an area like San Antonio. I think that's an intriguing question. Who's up next?
All right, let's go to Scott in Kansas City.
Scott in Kansas City, who you got?
Yeah, Clay, so I got Frank Martin, head coach of South Carolina.
Yeah, you must have been a former, thanks for the call, Kansas State fan. He's now down at South Carolina. Frank Martin is an intriguing dude. A lot of passion, a lot of what I would say piss and vinegar in him. And it would be intriguing to see a guy like that. One that hasn't been said yet, and I'm a little bit surprised, is Belichick. Belichick obviously is a super, super smart guy, and he certainly does not brook idiots well. And the organization of the Patriots is predicated on what? Do your job. That's all he wants you to do. Like, I'll put you in position to succeed, do your job. Now, the legend of Belichick, if Brady plays another couple of years and keeps winning at the level that he is in Tampa Bay, the legend of Belichick's coaching excellence is going to start to take more and more hits, because the debate over who's more responsible for the success of the Patriot dynasty, Brady or Belichick, if you're just using this year as a proxy for that, the answer is Tom Brady. I mean, I don't even think it's difficult. Who's up next, Danny G?
Kenny in Florida.
Kenny, who you drafting?
I got two as well. One I was thinking was Mark Cuban, and then I would definitely give a vote to Mike Ditka.
That's an interesting combo. Ditka is
also, one quick note. Trubisky's been ruled out for Sunday. He hurt his shoulder on the play against the Saints.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for that update. We were talking in hour one about the Titans and Bears with Lance Taylor, and that's right. Trubisky hurt himself, so the Bears really don't have any options other than Nick Foles. You know, it's interesting. Ditka is old. I mean, he's got to be over 80 years old now. So that is, generally speaking, I think, a tough position to put anybody in at that age to be president, although Joe Biden may end up president. He's 78, the oldest ever, so we'll see how that goes. But I do think the idea, who was the other? Oh, Cuban. Cuban is every bit as erratic on Twitter as Donald Trump is. I think it would be almost identical to having Donald Trump be president. So if you love Donald Trump, Cuban would be a version of Trump, also coming out of reality television, basically. I know he's made money and he's the owner of the Mavericks and everything else, but Shark Tank has made, I think, Mark Cuban a figure that is well known outside of the world of sports, right? If you're a sports fan, you would know him. And by the way, Cuban won't come on the show because he's afraid of me, which I understand. I mean, I think I would kind of embarrass him if he came on the show. He will slide into my mentions every now and then, though. And I'll be intrigued to see exactly what happens going forward. But he's from Shark Tank, is how most people know him, as an entrepreneur there, more so than even as a sports executive. Who's up next, Danny G?
Jacob in Indiana.
Jacob, who you drafting?
Hey, what's up, Clay? My pick's going to be Tony Dungy.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Great call. I think Dungy would be a fan. I mean, first of all, so much of coaching is communication, right? A really successful coach has to be able to communicate with his players, cut through the noise, and simplify things. I've always said that the best test of whether you really understand a complex subject is whether you can make everybody else understand it. It's what a great teacher does, which is really what coaching is by and large. It's also what a great trial lawyer would do. If you can take an incredibly complex subject and distill it into a way that everybody else can understand it, that's a sign that you would be probably a great teacher, great communicator, and also, I think, to a large extent, your communication skills define whether or not you are viewed as the successful president. And look, you know what the number one factor in whether or not you are able to be a successful doctor is, in terms of whether or not you're getting sued? It's not whether you're a great doctor, it's bedside manner. If you are a likable person, if you interact well with your patients, even if you are not great as a surgeon, doctor, whatever else, you get sued a lot less. It's really kind of fascinating if you look at the data on that. The more likable you are as a doctor, the less likely you are to get sued. It doesn't have as much to do with your overall talent as a doctor. By the way, we had somebody earlier talking about Herm Edwards, 15-11 so far at Arizona State as the head coach there. Who's up next?
Let's go to the VIP line. Matthew in South Carolina.
Matthew in South Carolina on the Outkick VIP. You can sign up for the Outkick VIP at Outkick.com, website you should be checking out every single day. Who you got?
Yes, sir. I got two of them for you. One of them's kind of outside the box. Being from South Carolina, I got to throw out the name Dabo Swinney.
Yeah, that's who we had.
Plays for him, just
loves
he
him.
Motivates people to do their job so well.
That's who Eddie Garcia took on the show yesterday, was Dabo. Who else?
Outside of the box, he's no longer alive, but if you've seen the movie Miracle, Herb Brooks, I think would be a great president.
Yeah, well, the fact that he's dead is a little bit of a downside. Thank you for the call, which make it tough to resurrect him. But who knows? Maybe he can end up voting in this election. Who's up next?
Mark in Boston.
Mark in Boston. Who you got?
Clay, I would have to say two people: Ernie Johnson, without question.
Oh, that's interesting.
And Scott Van Pelt.
Thanks for the call. Ernie, I know Van Pelt pretty well. He's a good dude. Ernie Johnson is an intriguing one. He manages and keeps the flow going on probably the best sports talk show that's ever existed. I think that's probably fair to say inside the NBA. I think it's hard to watch that show and not like Chuck and Kenny and Shaq and Ernie, who basically runs point there on that show. Seems like a really genuinely good dude. I don't know him personally. All right, how many more do we want to get to here before we go to break, Danny G?
We have two more holding.
All right, two more. Who else is up? Who's next?
Taylor in West Virginia.
Taylor, who's your draft pick?
Hey, I'm surprised nobody said this already, but what about Coach K?
No, that's good. Thanks for the call. It's a really good one. I mean, Coach K, again, organization. Coach K is a lot like Saban to me. If you're a basketball fan, the overlap between Coach K and Saban is pretty substantial. Neither one Brooks fools. Long-term success, dominant, used to winning with a variety of different players time after time after time. Seems to me to be very smart, incredibly intense on the sideline. I can see that being a good translation for sure. Also, doesn't age. This is kind of funny. Coach K has looked the exact same for like 30 years, 40 years even. Anybody doubt that? Like if you look at a picture of Coach K, part of it is that he dyes his hair, right? A lot of these guys dye their hair. They never go gray. And so they look the exact same. But it's kind of wild to think about how Coach K, if you put a picture of him up like 40 years ago next to today, he doesn't look really any different at all. Who's up next?
Ralph in Florida.
Last one before we go to break here. Ralph in Florida, who you got for me?
Hey, Clay, how are you? I'm voting for none other than the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones.
Oh, God, thank you. Jerry Jones would be incredible to watch as the president of the United States. Although, if you look at the situation that he's built out for the Dallas Cowboys right now, you know the Cowboys are 0-8 against the spread this year. 0-8. It is almost impossible to lose 8 straight against the spread. The Cowboys, I believe I saw this as a headline. No one in the NFL history, at least since they've been recording and comparing the lines, has ever gone 0-9 to start the season. In other words, if you're out there and you're betting on the Dallas Cowboys to cover, not to win, to cover, they are 0-8 against the number. Right now, I believe they are 13.5-point underdogs against the Steelers. That's the most recent line I've seen. If they don't cover that 13.5-point line, which, by the way, is the biggest home underdog the Dallas Cowboys have been since 1989. That is how long it has been since the Dallas Cowboys were that big of an underdog at home. If they don't cover against the Steelers, they would become the first team to ever go 0-9 against the spread in NFL history. That is a pretty unbelievable stat.